Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources, really dig in, and pull out the key nuggets of knowledge so you can get truly well-informed fast. Today, we're tackling one of the most complex and honestly volatile dynamics in international relations, the tangled relationship between Iran, Israel, and the United States.
Yeah, it's quite the trilogy.
Definitely. I mean, for decades, right? These three nations have been locked in this cycle of confrontation, deep mistrust, but also sometimes these surprising back-channel talks. It covers everything: nuclear ambitions, proxy wars, high-stakes diplomacy, even drone strikes. It's just an incredibly intricate web. History, ideology, strategy, it's all in there.
And our mission today, really, is to unpack not just what's happening in the headlines, but why. We'll dig into the history, look at the key flashpoints, weigh the, frankly, immense stakes involved, and think about what the future might hold for these deeply interconnected relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this then. To really get it, we probably need to start way back, that crucial turning point, 1979, the Islamic Revolution in Iran.
That's exactly the place our sources pinpoint as the start. Before 79, the U.S. and Iran, under the Shah, had this strong strategic partnership.
Right, they were allies.
Pretty close allies, yeah. But the revolution just completely turned that on its head. Ayatollah Khomeini comes to power. Iran takes this sharp ideological turn, fiercely anti-Western, and critically for the story, explicitly anti-Israel.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, that before the revolution, Israel and Iran actually had, well, decent relations.
Surprisingly cordial, yes. It's a historical detail people often forget. But post-79, Tehran starts actively backing groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon.
A Shiite group, yeah.
Exactly. And later Hamas, the Palestinian Islamist group in Gaza. Both, as the sources make very clear, are sworn enemies of Israel.
And all this time, the U.S. remains Israel's closest ally, diplomatically, militarily, economically. That alliance is sort of the bedrock on the other side of this triangle.
A foundational piece, absolutely. That enduring U.S.-Israel relationship shapes so much of the regional response.
So you have this pivotal moment in 79, Iran's new anti-Western stance. How quickly does that lead to these major flashpoints we see today, especially the nuclear program?
Well, the tension was there almost immediately, but the nuclear issue became the central point of contention over time. What's fascinating here is how it escalated. Israel, for a long time now, has seen a nuclear-armed Iran as a fundamental and existential threat, and the U.S. position has consistently been clear to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
That shared concern presumably led to the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, in 2015.
Precisely. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Under that deal, Iran agreed to significantly limit its nuclear activities. The trade-off was relief from international sanctions.
Seemed like a major diplomatic step. But then 2018 happened, the Trump administration pulls out. What was the thinking there beyond just calling it a bad deal?
Well, our sources suggest it was a mix of things. A feeling the deal didn't go far enough on Iran's ballistic missiles or its regional activities, its support for proxies.
The non-nuclear stuff.
Exactly. That, combined with a strategy of maximum pressure through sanctions and pulling out, that sent huge ripples, as you said.
How so?
Iran almost immediately restarted parts of its nuclear program that had been paused. And in response, Israel reportedly stepped up its covert actions, things like sabotage at nuclear sites, and controversially, the targeted assassinations of Iranian scientists.
A sort of shadow war.
That's the term everyone uses. Beyond the nuclear file, Iran and Israel are clashing indirectly all over the region: Syria, Iraq, Yemen.
How does that work?
Iran funds and arms militias, these proxy forces, and Israel conducts airstrikes against those assets, against weapons transfers, against Iranian personnel sometimes. It's like this constant dangerous game of whack-a-mole across the Middle East.
A brutal chess game, as you put it. Which brings us to the really complicated diplomatic side today. Deals, discord. How has the Biden administration tried to handle this?
Well, they certainly came in wanting to revive the nuclear deal. They made attempts, but honestly, those talks have pretty much stalled.
Why? What are the sticking points?
The core disagreements are still there, and they're pretty stark. Our sources lay them out clearly. Iran wants all sanctions lifted now. They see them as unfair.
And the U.S.?
The U.S. wants tighter inspections, longer-lasting restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. They're worried about how quickly Iran could potentially build a bomb if the deal collapses, the breakout time.
And Israel's position hasn't changed.
Israel remains opposed to the JCPOA framework altogether. They argue it's just not enough to stop Iran's nuclear ambitions or its regional influence.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. While the U.S. and Iran are at loggerheads, the region itself has been shifting. Those Abraham Accords, How do they fit into this Iran-Israel-U.S. picture?
Ah, the Abraham Accords. Those normalization deals between Israel and Arab states like the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco,
Yeah.
they were huge.
How do they impact Iran?
Yeah, fundamentally, they created this new alignment, a potential diplomatic and maybe even security bloc that sort of bypasses the traditional Arab-Israeli conflict narrative. It implicitly forms a united front against Iranian regional influence, effectively isolating Tehran further.
So it boxes Iran in a way.
It certainly strengthens the regional coalition, wary of Iran. And, if we zoom out even further, there's Iran's deepening relationship with Russia and China.
Right. That's been noticeable, especially post-sanctions.
And our sources suggest this isn't just tactical maneuvering because of sanctions. It might signal a bigger, longer-term strategic pivot by Tehran, maybe towards solidifying a more multipolar world, challenging that U.S.-led order. That's a whole other layer.
Another layer indeed. And speaking of layers and tensions, the last couple of years, 2023, 2024, they saw a pretty dramatic spike in direct confrontations, didn't they?
Absolutely. A marked escalation. We saw more drone attacks, cyber warfare became more prominent, and these bolder tit-for-tat strikes, especially in Iraq and Syria.
Wasn't there a specific incident in 2024 that really raised the temperature?
Yes. The reported Israeli strike on an Iranian military complex inside Iran. That was a major escalation. And Iran responded by firing missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. Tensions were, as our sources put it, just sky high.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza.
Exactly. While Tehran officially denies direct involvement in the October 7th attack, it's widely accused of backing Hamas, backing other groups involved in attacks on Israel and sometimes U.S. forces. It just pours fuel on an already raging fire.
Which really brings us to the critical question, maybe for you, the listener, to mull over. Are we just seeing controlled flare-ups, this dangerous but somehow managed back and forth, or is this a slow slide towards a full-blown regional war?
It's the key question, isn't it?
So summing up this tangled triangle, Iran, Israel, the U.S. It's a dynamic just soaked in history, driven by ideology, and with consequences that ripple out globally.
And when we look ahead, based on our sources, there seem to be, broadly, three potential paths. Path one, a new nuclear deal. Seems unlikely right now, given the stalemate, the mistrust.
Okay, path two.
Continued proxy warfare. That's basically the status quo, right? Dangerous, simmering, always risking escalation.
And path three.
The worst-case scenario, direct war between Israel and Iran, potentially drawing in the U.S. The consequences of that, catastrophic, not just for the region. They think global economy, oil markets, international stability, it'll be immense.
And diplomacy seems so fragile here.
Incredibly fragile. And domestic politics in all three countries, Tehran, Jerusalem, Washington, especially around elections, make compromise really, really difficult.
Okay, but zooming out one last time, beyond the immediate crises, our sources hint at something else, maybe a longer-term shift, a generational one. So what does this all mean for the future? Think about younger Iranians, maybe more connected to the outside world. Think about public opinion in Israel and the U.S., perhaps growing tired of seemingly endless conflict. How might these internal dynamics, this generational shift, eventually influence where things go? What role could public pressure or maybe some really creative outside-the-box diplomacy ultimately play?
Big question.
Definitely big questions. Something for you to keep reflecting on long after this deep dive.